Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. The international break, the first of many in this first part of the season, is over. So we're going to go through some of the updates that we've had over the international break, and let's look forward and ahead to game week 4 with a little bit of a guide on where you should be going with your teams.
Okay, then, yeah. So a lot of news over the international break, and the biggest one of all is that Ange is the new Nottingham Forest manager. This has seemed to happen pretty quickly. At the day of recording, he became manager today, on Tuesday. So yeah, it seemed like it happened within a matter of hours that Nuno was sacked, and then Ange was already lined up, which was expected because Ange has worked with Marinakis before. Obviously, big implications for Nottingham Forest assets as they go into a nice run after this Arsenal game in game week 4, which is going to be interesting. Ben, how many Forest players do you have, and what effect do you think it will have on your team?
Yeah, I mean, we and Postecoglou's coming in. I've got one Forest player, which is just a defensive player. And I think for Ange and the way he plays is definitely a lot more forward thinking than Nuno did, which is going to mean that defensively, we're not going to see as much points potential. We had a look and we analysed into some of the DEFCON stats from Ange Postecoglou teams compared to Nuno teams, and Ange Postecoglou gives teams DEFCON points rather than his own players getting it. But that's just the expansive style of play that he does play. I will say from an attacking perspective, it increases the appeal for some of those Nottingham Forest players just because we're going to see a lot more goals in Nottingham Forest games going forwards. I do think though that we're going to see this change. It could be that we see this change almost instantaneously. I doubt it's going to be the case for the next couple of game weeks. He'll install this over the next 5, 6, 7 game weeks, international breaks. He'll be using that to sort of install tactics. So I think we'll see a gradual change in terms of DEFCON contributions from Forest players and attacking potential as well. It's going to be a bit of a shift and a bit of transitional period really for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, defo agree on that one. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he does manage because towards the end of his time at Spurs, he almost was forced to adapt to the players that he had available in terms of them playing a little bit deeper. We saw that in the Europa League final. So whether he does that straight away, obviously that back four that he has at Forest in the minute is not exactly blessed with pace. So it'll be interesting watch to see how they get on over the first couple of weeks, and obviously a varied level of opponent as well. We've got Arsenal obviously this weekend, and then they face I think Burnley and Sunderland after that. So yeah, it will be an interesting watch, but some exciting news there. Obviously, Nuno probably shouldn't have been sacked, but that's a whole another video in itself. Going on to the injury updates then. So Liam Delap obviously got injured in game week 3 with a hamstring injury. He's expected to miss at least 10 FPL game weeks, which is quite a lengthy period of time. This obviously doesn't really does it impact Liam Delap really as an FPL option because he wasn't really one in the first place, but it's for the players around him. So João Pedro's minutes, which obviously was a concern prior to Liam Delap being injured, is obviously fantastic now. You can almost guarantee him starting most weeks. I think even with Champions League football, I'd be expecting João Pedro to play 2 games a week. There's no forward other than Mark Gui. And will they be playing Mark Gui in the Premier League from the start? I think it's more of a case of João Pedro coming off earlier rather than him not starting games. So yeah, an interesting one there, and also interesting for the wingers as well because it means there's more minutes up for grabs. So the likes of obviously Esteval, Neto, Garnacho, they're all fighting for those places. So it'll be an interesting one. What's your thoughts, Ben? Obviously, you've had Pedro since the start. Obviously, did have Cole Palmer. Do you think this is a good thing for João Pedro?
Definitely a good thing for João Pedro, just given that there's so much more minute security now around that centre forward position. Whether it affects the wingers too much, I don't think it's going to affect the wingers as much as it is going to with João Pedro, just because obviously I didn't see Delap as a player that would facilitate sort of a wing spot. Maybe if he was in and João Pedro moves to either wing, that's a possibility for sure. But for the time being, I don't think it's gonna, it might positively affect the minutes of some of those wingers, but again, it's going to be a little bit of a lottery with, there's so many of them that it's difficult to choose between. But for João Pedro, that is the standout for me in terms of, the update from that injury.
Yeah, and then moving on to William Saliba as well. He obviously came off early in that Liverpool game just before the international break. It was seen that he was actually injured in the warm up, but decided to carry on and try and play through it. Came off really early. He's going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks, according to L'Equipe. I think that's how you pronounce it with my GCSE in French. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one for Arsenal. I thought Mascara was really good when he came on at Anfield, and obviously their defence is reinforced now. Arsenal, you could argue that their backup back four is better than probably 75% of the league's starting back four. So yeah, a lot of strength in depth there. Are you worried, Ben? Would you be worried about Arsenal defence with Saliba missing?
No, I'd be more worried if it was like a year ago and Saliba was missing. But now with the backup options that Arsenal have, it really, that it almost to an extent the system is so good. Sometimes a slight decrease in personnel in terms of technical quality is not actually going to impact too much in terms of the sort of defensive capability of this Arsenal team. So for me, I'd be intrigued by, the replacement. And obviously, if Mascara comes in at 5.5, it's a little bit, more value, but I'd still sort of maybe steer more towards the safety of Gabriel if you are looking at a replacement for Saliba.
Absolutely. And then obviously the final one, which has probably hurt the most managers, it seems like by our Instagram questions, is Ismaila Sarr. He picked up an injury, obviously against Aston Villa. It looked like a hamstring injury, and he should be missing now for a few weeks. It's not been confirmed the timescale, but yeah, we definitely think he'll be missing game week 4 at the bare minimum. So yeah, probably a sell. And a lot of people are asking for the best Sarr replacement. So yeah, what's your thoughts on Sarr in general, Ben? It seems quite frustrating for owners because they probably only just brought him in with the nice fixtures ahead for Palace, and now he's gone and got injured, which is frustrating.
Yeah, it is really frustrating, and hopefully we'll get a bit of clarity prior to the deadline. Oliver Glasner is usually quite open and honest with the injuries of his players, so hopefully we'll see like a bit of an update. And depending on what this injury actually is, of course it says here a grade 2 tear to his hamstring, which is obviously not ideal. That's definitely at least a few weeks out. So we'll have to just wait and see. Obviously, Palace will want to do their own test on Ismaila and see how he has been affected by this injury, and that it could be a case that he's only out for a couple of weeks. If so, there's a case to hold. But in all the cases, we're so sort of early on into the season, there is going to be some players definitely of interest to replace him with.
Yeah, and starting with one of those, it's going to be Antoine Semenyo. Obviously, it's slightly more expensive than Sarr, so it will be needing a bit of budget to get there. But he's been probably one of the most standout players in the opening 3 game weeks of the season. Bournemouth in general probably shocked quite a few with their performances, given that they lost so many players over the summer. I think it's just interesting. We spoke about it a lot in pre-season that we didn't think that in terms of DEFCONs and things like that, that their defence would be impacted too much by the loss of Huijsen. Obviously, Senesi was playing ahead of him last season to begin the season, and it seems like Senesi's become that guy. So yeah, so overall, Bournemouth are looking really, really good. Brighton at home, Newcastle at home, not the best fixtures, but I wouldn't say they're the worst. Definitely scoreable in those games. And then he has Leeds away in 3 game weeks' time. Nearly 30% owned. Are you interested in him, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even, without owning Sarr in my team, I'd be interested in Antoine Semenyo because the form has been there and the entry point for fixtures is Leeds away, probably. The longer term fixture run is fantastic for Bournemouth. But of course, there's no sort of, there's no bad sort of downside to bringing him in a couple of weeks early for a couple of home games in a row. He is looking fantastic again this season, and he's shown a lot of qualities of a definite sort of top tier Premier League player to get sort of the potential 15-20 goals this season based on his performances. So I do think he's going to be a fantastic transfer, and it's no surprise that he's already 30% owned. I'm going to sort of have probably a bit of FOMO if I'm not with him before the deadline.
Yeah, indeed. He's going to be a good one to watch over the next couple of weeks. Another one that's been sort of sparking the eye test for sure is Esteval from Chelsea. We obviously mentioned the Chelsea wingers briefly when talking about the Liam Delap injury. 6.5 million, he's 2.5% owned, so super differential. Picked up 2 assists already, which were really good. Obviously, we expect his minutes to be decent for the short term, is what I would say. I wouldn't expect someone like Garnacho to come in this week against Brentford away. Obviously, he's had no pre-season really. And I think he even posted on Instagram that he was absolutely blowing after his first training session with Chelsea. So I'd expect a few bench appearances before he comes into play. What's the thoughts of Esteval, Ben? Do you think he's probably one of the better wingers options in that Chelsea team?
Yeah, he is, and I think he's going to be like a 2 or maybe even 3 week punt. So it's going to be managers who are looking to, change their team, transfer him out, or even wild card, fairly soon. Because I do think whilst he is a fantastic player, he is going to come in and out of the team a lot this season. Just because obviously age and experience in the Premier League. I do think they're going to want to try and sort of bed him into that team and into the league. So yeah, I think he's going to be a decent option for the next couple of game weeks, but it's the price point playing for Chelsea, which I think is going to be appealing for a lot of managers. So yeah, it's one where I'd almost sort of, if you're going to go for it, you've just got to go for it for the next 2 weeks. And if you do get a benching, then that is the risk that you're taking with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously Champions League as well to factor in for Chelsea, so there could be more minutes risks ahead. Someone who doesn't have European football is Lucas Paqueta. He's sort of come onto the radar after his penalty goal, and telling the West Ham fans that he was staying at Nottingham Forest last time out. 2 goals. He actually has 0 assists. There's an error on the graphic. On penalties, what's impressed me probably the most with him is that he's got pretty decent DEFCON numbers. He had 15 against Nottingham Forest, 11 against Chelsea. So you're looking potentially at a mini Bruno Fernandes at West Ham with the DEFCONs, the penalties, and him potentially playing a little bit further forward now if they do sort of persist with that 4 at the back formation that obviously got them the 3-0 win at the City ground. So, Ben, what's your thoughts on Paqueta?
Yeah, I mean, don't mind him as an asset at 5.9 million, like sub six. He's going to be pretty cheap. I think he's going to be a player that if you are sort of low on budget that you go for, not going to be sort of a player that I'd sort of instantly go, yes, I absolutely want him, because of course he's playing for a fairly inconsistent West Ham team and they didn't look great at all in the first couple of games of the season. Paqueta obviously coming in and sort of playing really well in the game against Forest in particular. I thought he was fantastic. So one that will have, a fairly high floor, and a potentially really high ceiling as well. But you may sort of end up on a run of fixtures. You may go a few games without scoring or assisting. So you're going to have to be a little bit more patient with him. So yeah, don't mind it. Not my favorite pick in the world, but equally, I don't think it's the worst option either.
Okay, then. So, yeah, we'll be moving on to the captaincy for this week. I think it's fairly straightforward. If you have Mo Salah, just chuck the armband on him. It's a no-brainer. Despite the form, I think fixtures tend to breed form. A lot of people are maybe worried about Liverpool, defensively, and as well for Mo Salah in those opening games. But they face 3 very, very tough fixtures with Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Arsenal. So for me, I'm not too worried. I'll probably take that sort of sample size of data with a pinch of salt, because they're probably the 3 of the hardest teams that Liverpool will be playing this season. So, yeah, for me, Mo Salah is coming in on my wild card and he will have the armband. Is there any sort of case you could make, Ben, for going elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, you can, but there's not like too many other options elsewhere that, and you will be playing a very, very big risk with not going with Salah in your team or captain. I think he's pretty standout. I do think there's potential, like if you've got Haaland, maybe sort of looking at him. Of course, we might see Cole Palmer, we might not this game week, so that runs a high risk. Arsenal against Forest is probably sort of the best other fixture of the game week, so you can look at maybe Gyökeres again. Didn't play too well over the international break, and we've not seen too much from him yet. There's been a couple of sort of sparks and moments. So yeah, if you're looking at someone who we know sort of traditionally has been consistent, Mo Salah is pretty standout for me.
Yeah, definitely agreeing on that one. So we got a few questions here from Instagram. If you don't follow us over there, make sure you do, because every single week we'll put a little question box out and the best ones will come through onto the YouTube video to be answered. So, yeah, first question, is it time to sell Forest assets? Obviously, we mentioned it briefly with when talking about Ange, Ben. I think for the most part, it's probably going to be a hold and wait and see until they get those good fixtures out of the way, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be sort of a bit of a hold. There's, of course, Arsenal away, we're not going to get any information from that this game week. It is going to be the good fixture run that Forest have after that, where we're going to get a little bit more information on, what style of play Ange's going to play, how this is going to affect FPL. And look, I said this previously, will it actually affect Forest for the first couple of game weeks? I think they'll play a similar sort of style anyway, and then we'll gradually see change. So it's a hold for me for now.
Yeah, indeed. I'll be backing that as well. The next one is going to be time to buy Vissa or Voltamade. I've seen a lot of people very interested in either or both. I think for me, they're just too big of a minutes risk initially. You're talking about Vissa, who hasn't had pre-season with Brentford. Similar case to most of the new signings, like Isak as well, especially. So for me, I'd probably avoid both right now. We don't know who's first choice. We don't know if they're going to play together. It's just a wait and see. I know the fixture isn't too bad, and they have a decent fixtures coming up as well, Newcastle. But I'd probably put the handbrake on that one until we see how they're lining up. What's your thoughts on that one, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's a wait and see. If there's one that I was going to sort of lean towards, it'd probably be Visser, just because of the Premier League experience. But again, we just don't know what sort of minutes that they're both going to get. Voltamada we saw play in the international break, so look, let's just wait and see with these guys. I don't think there's any real rush to bring them in. There's a few different striker options that are banding about at the moment, so we can wait and be patient on this one to see who is going to be that first choice at number 9, and potentially if they're going to play up top together as well.
Yeah, defo. It can be an interesting link up that will be. Salah triple captain versus Burnley. Obviously, me and you are very firm in the captaincy camp. Have you thought about the triple captaincy chip this week?
Yeah, I thought about it definitely. I think it's definitely an option and viable this week. Of course, I think the thing that's going to be putting people off is the sort of small sample size that we've seen of Salah performances this season, which hasn't been the greatest. But if we look at the wider data set from last season in terms of Salah away from home, it was fantastic. Better than when he was at home. He got 16 goals away from home last season, which is fantastic against a team in Burnley that looks to be sort of one of the sort of worst 2 teams in the league. So if you're looking at it based on sort of this season, then you sort of steer a little bit clear of it. But based on traditional last season data and a wider data set, you'd say that it's a pretty viable triple captaincy this week.
Yeah, I really like it, to be honest. If I weren't wildcarding, I'd be considering it myself. I think when looking at how Burnley have been conceding so far this season, it tends to be down that right, well, their left-hand side, the attacking right-hand side. We saw it with Kudus in Game Week 1, getting a couple of assists for Richarlison. And obviously Mbumo as well was very dangerous against them in Game Week 3 for United. So, yeah, for me, I think I would be strongly considering it. If you have a gut feeling that you want to go for it, then I certainly wouldn't put you off activating that triple captaincy chip. Final question then, before we get on to some quick fire ones. Who's better short term, Isak or Watkins? I think this is fairly straightforward, Ben, at the minute, after Isak only getting a few minutes off the bench for Sweden last night, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Ollie Watkins for the short term. We know the minutes are secure. We know Aston Villa's fixture run is fantastic. And look, that's a transfer that you can make 3, 4, 5 game weeks down the line quite easily. You won't have to get too much money in the bank to be able to facilitate that move. So yeah, for now, Ollie Watkins is the one to own. And in a few game weeks, we could very well see that change over to Isak. I could see a lot of people making that move, just not yet.
Yeah, it's a good position to be in, having the ability to move to Isak from Watkins. So, yeah, hold the fire on that one for now. We're going on to some quick fire questions now. 5 of these before we wrap up today's video. Top 3 players you'd have on a free hit, Ben. We've got our free hit draft coming out tomorrow, but who would you have on it today?
Yeah, so if I was free hitting this week in my top 3, I'd probably say Salah number 1. Number 2, I would go with Jean-Philippe Mateta, and number 3, Semenyo.
I'll try and pick 3 different ones, which would be a bit difficult, but number 1, I'd probably go Cody Gakpo, because I think the minutes will be fine for this week, especially, and you can really sort of capitalise on that and not have the burden of having him longer term. I think Daniel Munoz against Sunderland at home will be an interesting one. And a little rogue outsider shout, I'll go with Joachim Andersen against Leeds, just because I think Leeds don't have the firepower to get goals, which will be an interesting one on the free hit this week. Question 2, favourite Sarr replacement?
My favourite Sarr replacement is probably Antoine Semenyo. The long-term fixtures are there, as well as the form.
I like that one. If you don't have the funds, though, I probably would say Paquetá. I really like him personally. I like players who have multiple routes to points. That's why I've been banging the Bruno Fernandes drum all season long. So Paquetá is a little bit of a mini version of him. Question then, best forward to buy for Game Week 4, Ben?
If you don't have him, João Pedro, by far.
Indeed, he's super high owned. I think that ownership is only going to get higher and higher. I think outside of that, it gets a bit more difficult. I think if you're looking for a short-term punt, then obviously Mateta's really nice with those two fixtures on the horizon. I think even without Eze, Palace have shown that they can still feed him and get him some goals. On to the next one then. Sell or keep Bruno Fernandes. Ben, you're an owner of him now. What are you doing with him?
I'll be looking at keeping Bruno Fernandes. The stats actually look really good. You know, when he's playing an attacking mid and when he's playing in a pivot, the attacking numbers remain the same so far. So that's a really promising sort of point there. So yeah, I'll be looking at keeping him for the foreseeable.
Yeah, I definitely advise keeping him as well because there's a good chance that he could even play further forward against City and Chelsea, depending on these injuries to Mason Mount and Mateus Cunha. So yeah, definitely a keep. The best defender to buy for Game Week 4, the final one.
Or I would say, based on sort of some of the performances that we've seen so far, I'd be looking towards someone like Lacroix or Chris Richards, because Palace are looking pretty decent. Yes, they do have the European commitments, but the DEFCON is pretty high and they're performing at a very high level at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, for me, I think if I was buying any defender right now, it's probably going to be an Arsenal one. So I'll probably go with Gabriel just because Arsenal have been so good defensively so far this season. They've gone away at Anfield, away at Old Trafford, and they've conceded 0 big chances so far this season. So yeah, the Arsenal defense is definitely still thriving in 2025. Okay, then, so that wraps up the Game Week 4 guide for this week. Let us know any more questions that you have in the comments, and we'll be sure to answer them.
Yeah, as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben,
I've been Josh.
and we'll see you guys
Next time. Have a good game week, everyone.